Hello and welcome back to Born to Rant. I'm Brandon, and this week we are here to talk about Universal's attempt to blend Toy Story, Gremlins, and Child's Play into one glorious hodgepodge that was both exciting and terrifying to kids. That's right, this week we are talking all about 1998's Small Soldiers, how it came to be, everything that makes it a blast, and its legacy nearly 30 years later. Small Soldiers is a movie that I remember getting on VHS like the week it came out. I don't think I even got to see it in theaters, but I remember watching this movie on a loop and just thinking it was the funniest, most insane movie I'd ever seen. What can I say? I was 8. But seriously, Small Soldiers is one of those movies that exists in the magical period of early CGI and the height of practical effects. Because this movie blends CGI puppets with real puppets created by Stan Winston and his team. And look, the CGI is very obvious now. But in 1998, when this movie came out, I couldn't tell the difference between the two. It probably helps that I was watching on VHS through a crappy TV, but whatever. And did this movie scare me as a kid? Not really. Although there are a couple times where Alan gets stabbed and we see blood that did kind of get under my skin. But mostly, I just remember having a crush on Kirsten Dunst and thinking Phil Hartman was the funniest person on the planet. But more than all that, I think this movie is just exceptionally well made. The screenplay is very tight. You can see how every decision in every scene leads to a consequence the characters will have to grapple with down the road. Plus, look at all these explosions. And before we go any further, just a quick reminder that Born to Rant is a completely independent channel, and I use absolutely no AI in the making of my videos, and that includes ChatGPT. So please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And now I think it's time we dive into how Small Soldiers came to be. It sounds like Joe Dante was brought on board very early in the development process and was given the directive to create a movie that was aimed at teenagers and rode the line between fantasy and horror. Look, let's just call it what it is. Dante was brought on board to make the Gremlins version of Toy Story. He's basically said as much in interviews. Originally, I was told to make an edgy picture for teenagers, or when the sponsor ties came in, the new mandate was to soften it up as a kiddie movie. Too late, as it turned out. And there are elements of both approaches in there. Just before release, it was purged of a lot of action explosions. Additionally, Dante's original plans included the movie being a split of 90% puppetry and only about 10% CGI for the Commando Elite and Gorgonites. However, while filming was underway, Dante and the crew realized that a lot of times it was just easier to shoot a background plate real quick and then ship it off to ILM, who would add in the CGI characters, and then they could move on to the next scene that much quicker. Now, the interesting thing about the toys in this movie is that they were designed by Stan Winston, who you guys might know from his work on movies like Terminator, Aliens, The Thing, Predator, and his last movie before his death was 2008's Iron Man. There are actually a lot of great behind-the-scenes clips from Stan Winston's team available here on YouTube at the channel Stan Winston School. I highly recommend taking a look at how they brought these puppets to life. And actually, the movie's original plan to focus on puppetry versus CGI characters ended up making the CGI artists for this movie have to work a lot harder and use the very detailed puppets as their model. The big thing that Joe Dante had to contend with this movie is that Universal and DreamWorks kept changing what the movie was. Like I said, originally Dante was told to make a movie for teenagers, something a little nasty and mean with a sarcastic edge. Then it sounds like the studio got cold feet and sold the movie as a kid-friendly adventure, which caused Dante to have to completely re-edit the movie and remove certain explosions and action beats, which really sucks. As for the casting, it sounds like our two leads, Kirsten Dunst and Gregory Smith, were both cast off of how successful their previous movies had been. And for the Commando Elite and Gorgonites, the production went in a very strange but cool direction. The Commando Elite are mostly voiced by the cast of The Dirty Dozen from 1967, with two exceptions. Bruce Dern stepped in to replace Richard Jekyll, who unfortunately passed just prior to filming beginning, and Tommy Lee Jones stepping in to play their leader, Major Chip Hazard. Apparently, Dante originally wanted the cast of Predator to voice the Commando Elite, and damn, that would have been so cool. As for the Gorgonites, we've got the great Frank Langella as their leader, Archer, the great Jim Cummings as Ocula, but the rest of the Gorgonites are actually cast by the three leads of This Is Spinal Tap for some reason. I have no idea why, but it's very funny to me that they did that. And on July 10th, 1998, Small Soldiers was released into theaters, and on its opening weekend, it made $14 million against its $40 million budget, and it was number 3 at the box office behind Lethal Weapon 4 and Armageddon. And Small Soldiers would go on to make a worldwide total of of $71.8 million at the box office, making it a mild disappointment for Universal and DreamWorks. But that wouldn't really matter because once Small Soldiers hit the home video market, it immediately exploded in popularity. It's actually one of the only PG-13 rated movies to ever be released in a clamshell case. While this movie would go on to find its audience on home video, the critics who reviewed it at the time didn't quite get what the movie was going for, which is fair because again, Dante has two different tones in this movie. But as someone that was 8 years old when Small Soldiers was released, I can tell you firsthand, I loved this movie. It was everything I wanted. It was silly and sarcastic, but still had a sense of danger to it that really intrigued me. And with all of that out of the way, I think it's time that we dive deep into Small Soldiers and everything that makes it awesome.
You're the Commando Elite. Everything else is just a toy.
Small Soldiers begins with a really excellent little bit of exposition, introducing us to Globotech and its CEO, Gil Mars, played by Dennis Leary. This is also just an excellent bit of satire that has only become more relevant as corporate conglomerates continue to merge and take over our society, but I digress. We're then introduced to Jay Moore as Larry Benson and David Cross as Irwin Wayfair, and we learn that the toy company they work for, Heartland Toys, has been bought out by Globotech, and these two are the only employees that remain.
There is no longer any everybody else.
So, since these two are the only employees left, their first order of business is pitching new toys to Mars. Irwin's is very sloppy and very funny, and then Larry's is over the top and pristine, and when Major Chip Hazard punches his way out of the box, we get this great little monologue from Mars about how he's tired of commercials showing us things that products can't actually do. So he just gives them the go-ahead to make the most technologically savvy action figures that have ever existed, and just so this wasn't a complete waste of everyone's time, he makes the Commando Elite, Larry's pitch, the good guys, and the Gorgonites, Irwin's pitch, the bad guys, and the two are sentenced to wage war against one another forever. We then get our first of several little nods to Gremlins as Larry and Irwin are given their secret passwords.
Mine's Gizmo.
I said secret.
And a very funny scene of Larry buying military-grade microchips to put in the toy line. And the montage of the toys being made really introduces us to the excellent score by the late, great Jerry Goldsmith. And Goldsmith and Dante have a long history of working together, and his scores always really help elevate and ground the bonkers world that Dante creates in his movies. And Small Soldiers is no exception. The way the score expertly weaves between optimistic, almost whimsical moments to the military-inspired dread of the Commando Elite theme is just peak Jerry Goldsmith. Our hero, Alan Abernathy, played by Gregory Smith, is introduced as he rides his way through town towards his dad's toy store where he works and helps take in inventory, which introduces us to another longtime Joe Dante collaborator, Dick Miller, as Joe. And we get some exposition about Alan watching the store for his dad and how his dad might be finally starting to trust him again. And then, like only a dumbass teenager could do, he suggests taking a couple of boxes out of Joe's truck and opening them up. And then he asks Joe to give him the toys so he can sell them and make the store a little profit while his dad is out of town. You know, it's true what they say, the best way to get your parents to trust you is to commit grand larceny, fraud, and break a release date with a major corporation. As you can tell, Alan is not the smartest kid that's ever existed. As Alan is trying to set up the store, in walks his neighbor, Christy Fimple, played by Kirsten Dunst, and her little brother, Timmy Fimple, played by Jacob Smith. And they're there to pick out a toy for their parents to buy Timmy for his birthday. And Christy gives us just a little more exposition about Alan's reputation. While Christy and Timmy are in the store, Timmy wanders off and immediately finds Chip Hazard and Archer going at it. And I love that Chip shoots Timmy with a dart here. As Timmy and Christy go to leave, we see that she's got a cool older guy boyfriend who drives a motorcycle, and Alan notices his dad left his plane ticket behind, so he rushes home. The introduction to Alan's parents is also just a great time. We've got Ann Magnuson as Irene Abernathy and Kevin Dunn as Stuart Abernathy, and I love that Kevin Dunn would basically go on to play the same kind of dad character again in 2007's Transformers. Like, we see that Stuart is just a giant ball of stress, and Irene does her best to keep him calm. This is also where we're introduced to the late great Phil Hartman as Phil Fimple. What a name. And this would sadly be his final role before his tragic murder. Now, the introduction of Phil and Stuart gives us one of the best conflicts in this movie. We've got Stuart, a stressed out small business owner who just wants to relax relax and play with his cool old toys. Then we've got Phil, a total modern day dork who just wants to install his new giant satellite dish and connect it to his big state-of-the-art stereo system. And this little face that Phil makes as he goes to cut down Stuart Tree is just everything I love and miss about Phil Hartman. That night, Alan goes upstairs to do his homework and Archer begins talking to him, and Alan quickly realizes that there is a lot more to these toys than initially meets the eye. In fact, later while Alan is sleeping, Archer wakes up and starts looking through Alan's computer, and hey look, a sick Power Man 5000 poster. Archer's browsing is interrupted by Alan's cat coming over to say hi and lick him, and for my money, this is the cutest moment in the entire movie and the best joke.
Alan, friend of Archer, defender of all Gorgonites, keeper of Encarta.
Guys, remember Encarta? Meanwhile, back at the toy store, Chip Hazard and the rest of the Commando Elite have woken up and punched their way out of their toy boxes. And we get this great little scene of the men lining up and introducing themselves, and we get this hilarious little Patton spoof with Chip Hazard in front of a puzzled American flag monologuing about their mission to destroy the Gorgonite scum. That next morning, Alan arrives at the store to find it's been completely trashed and the Commando Elite and Gorgonites are nowhere to be found. As Alan's in the middle of panicking, Christy shows up to buy Chip for her brother's birthday, and I love the way she just kind of bullies her way into the store, and when she sees the disaster inside, she asks Alan if he's trying to pull some sort of insurance scam. It's so stupid and funny. And here's where we finally get the full reveal of Alan's backstory, and the way Alan says,
I swear, I did one thing wrong, that's it. And I'm branded for life.
Has stuck with me my entire life. It's one of the first lines I think about when I think about this movie, and I really have no idea why. But the best part about all of this is that Alan says he did one thing wrong and then reveals he got kicked out of 2 different schools, so obviously not just one wrong thing. Christy decides to stay and help Alan clean up his dad's store, and we get a sly little joke where they make fun of the TV show Party of 5, which was very popular at the time and happened to also star Jacob Smith as the youngest brother. We also get these 2 90 kids talking about how much they love the X-Files and Led Zeppelin, which same, in 1998, Led Zeppelin and The Who were hands down my 2 favorite bands. Well, them and Green Day, I guess. So right as these 2 finish cleaning up the store, Alan's dad arrives back from his trip to check up on Alan, and he immediately notices that something is off and finds that his large model ship is completely broken. So Alan's dad is understandably very upset and frustrated that Alan couldn't even take care of the store for 1 full day, and he sends Alan home where he calls Globotech to complain, and we get this excellent cameo by Sherry O'Terry as a call center worker, and I love the way she just smiles and ends the call with,
Have a nice day, ma'am.
I'm not a ma'am.
It's actually hilarious. So once he's been transferred to a voicemail, Alan leaves a very angry message about the toys wrecking his dad's store and threatening a lawsuit. And when Larry and Irwin hear this voicemail, they start to get very worried. Well, Irwin does. Larry's kind of an idiot, but once they put it all together, they realize they could have a massive problem on their hands. And I remember the line,
You put munitions, chips, and toys?
was one of the big jokes in the trailer. Larry and Irwin then go to visit the guy who created the chips, and we get a nice little bit of foreshadowing that the chips are slightly defective and are extremely sensitive to an electromagnetic pulse. More on that in a bit. I also love the way this guy sneezes in his suit and the debris just stays on his visor. Later that night, the Commando Elite break into Alan's house looking for the other Gorgonites and torturing Archer, but not before Alan throws Nick Nitro into the garbage disposal, which of course wakes his parents up. And when he tries to explain the situation, they understandably think he's fully lying and also probably on drugs. So in the morning, Alan goes back to the store and he finds the rest of the Gorgonites have all been hiding in the dumpster outside the store, and he brings them home to clean them up and figure out what's next. When out of nowhere, Christy calls to check in and see if Alan is grounded or not, and the 2 flirt back and forth a bit. Unfortunately for them, the Commando Elite are listening in and making a plan of their own. And when the Commando Elite break into the Fimple house, the soldiers then get a view of Christy's massive Gwendy doll collection, and I really think it's funny how horny all these soldiers are for the dolls. But Chip Hazard can't allow that. They clearly need a bigger army, so they take the chip out of Nick Nitro's head and start Frankensteining the Gwendy dolls into additional soldiers. And I love how creepy the scene actually is, and that when we cut back to Alan's house, the Gorgonites are actually watching Frankenstein. Later that night, when Christy's boyfriend drops her off back at home, the movie really kicks into gear. First of all, her boyfriend sees that her parents are passed out on the couch and really wants to come in, but Christy says no, and her throwing her coat on top of poor tied-up Timmy is hilarious. Once in her room, Christy is quickly attacked by all her Gwendy dolls, who were all voiced by Sarah Michelle Gellar and Christina Ricci, and they really add just the perfect bit bit of personality to the crazed Gwendy dolls as they attack Christy. Also, I think this attack on Christy is where Jamie Anderson's cinematography really begins to shine through as a highlight of the movie. The way the set feels like it's out of a horror movie, just all of the flashing lights and hints of purple and the Dutch angles all make this feel very unique and fun. Plus, the entire scene is scored by Led Zeppelin's Communication Breakdown, which is the best song from Led Zeppelin 1. If you disagree, tell me your favorite track from Led Zeppelin 1 in the comments. Also, how the hell did they afford this song? So, as Christy is being attacked, her boyfriend comes in to try and save the day, only to be immediately overwhelmed by the Gwendy dolls and set on fire, so he just runs out of the house in his boxers and we never see him again. The Commando Elite then force Christy to tape a ransom video, and upon seeing it, Alan and Archer hatch a plan to trick the Commandos and save Christy. Once inside, Alan quickly fights off the Gwendy dolls and rescues Christy, who's so relieved she instantly kisses him, you know, because her boyfriend ran away and gave up on her immediately. So the two climb out Christy's window to head to Alan's house, only to find the Commando Elite have taken over Christy's family's garage and created themselves a fleet of assault vehicles, including one that shoots Alan in the leg with corn holders, which again is so dumb and funny. We then get this great little chase scene with the Commando Elite chasing Alan and Christy on her little moped, and I love that the two get away, which immediately takes out most of the Commando Elite. Unfortunately, Chip Hazard makes it and immediately spies a giant toy store topped with a giant Chip Hazard balloon, and he hijacks Joe's truck and activates hundreds more Commando Elite. At this point, Christy's parents have woken up and everyone is over at Alan's house trying to figure out what the hell is going on. Phil obviously doesn't believe a word of what Alan and Christy are telling him, and then Irwin and Larry show up, and Irwin is very nice and apologetic, while Larry is acting like a corporate asshole and threatening to sue, all while he's got this fake nice guy smile on. However, everyone is quick to accept Alan and Christy's version of events once an army of Commando Elite show up at their door demanding the Gorgonite scum, and really just wanting to wage war on the Abernathy and Fimple families. And here is where the movie fully crosses into what if instead of Gremlins, they were evil toys territory. And for the record, I'm not complaining. I love everything about the last half hour of this movie, from Phil trying to wave the white flag and calling the Gorgonites
Gorgonzolas,
to Alan's mom using a tennis racket to hit back the flaming tennis balls, and the bit of the Commando Elite using Spice Girls to psychologically torture the family is a joke that has only gotten funnier with time. I also really like these four hiding under the kitchen table and giving us all the exposition we need about how EMPs work, what their options are, and how it'll stop the toys. But before Alan can make his way to create an EMP blast, Chip Hazard shows up in his cool little helicopter, and we get a nice little nod to Apocalypse Now with Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries playing. The scene with Alan at the top of the power lines is tense and fun. I really like that it actually feels dangerous. Like when Chip stabs Alan, you immediately see blood come through his glove. Luckily, Archer sees his friend is in trouble and is slingshotted up to the power lines to finally fight with Chip Hazard, which completely shatters his programming to hide and lose. Finally, Alan gets the upper hand and uses Chip to close his circuit and create the power overload he needs, creating a giant EMP blast that takes out the Commando Elite. And the imagery of Christy on the riding lawnmower mowing over all her Gwendy dolls is so dumb and a great way to end this conflict. The next morning, as the police, firemen, and ambulances are all in front of the houses working through the mess and trying to figure out what the hell is going on, Gil Mars arrives in a helicopter, and I think the funniest joke in this movie is the parents yelling at him about the mess and that there's no way he can make things right, and then as soon as they see the number on the check he hands him, they're more than happy and immediately shut up. We then get a little tease for a sequel that we'll never get, with Mars saying,
I know some rebels in South America are going to find these toys very entertaining.
In the cleanup, Alan discovers that the Gorgonites did in fact survive the EMP blast, having taken shelter underneath Phil's giant satellite dish, and the movie ends with Alan putting the Gorgonites in his dad's toy ship and setting them down the river so that they can find their home of Gorgon. So, nearly 30 years later, what is the legacy of Joe Dante's Small Soldiers? Well, I think it's one of those movies that most millennials love if you saw it at the right age. It has the kind of whimsy and fun premise that Toy Story would give us, What If Your Toys Were Alive, and mixes it with the fun, silly silly horror of Gremlins and a little bit of Child's Play, I suppose. While there was never a proper sequel to Small Soldiers, it did get a video game adaptation in '98, which I never played, but people seem to have some fondness for it. And in 2014, it was announced that Fox and Justin Lin were developing a movie called Toymageddon, and it was widely speculated that this was going to be either a Small Soldiers sequel or remake. And when Disney bought Fox in 2019, they canceled the project and seemingly confirmed it would have been a remake of Small Soldiers. And honestly, I'm totally okay with not ever seeing another Small Soldiers movie. I mean, unless Joe Dante wants to give us another bonkers Gremlins 2-esque sequel, in which case sign me the hell up. But in all honesty, I had a great time revisiting this movie. It's such a time capsule of a movie, the kind of edgy kids movie that doesn't really get made anymore. And I actually do think we're overdue for a Gremlins or Small Soldiers-esque movie where a town gets overrun by a bunch of little evil guys. But let me know what you all think in the comments. Do you want a Small Soldiers sequel? What would you want to see in something like that? And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you for watching. It truly means the world. And an extra special thank you to all of my supporters over on Patreon. You all make these videos possible. If you'd like to join the Born to Rant Patreon, there's a link in the description below. Patrons get to help me choose what videos to cover on this channel, access to an exclusive Discord server, and early access to new videos. And just another reminder that Born to Rant is a completely independent channel, and I use absolutely no AI in the making of my videos. We release new videos covering all of your childhood favorites every Thursday morning at 7 a.m. Pacific time. So please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.